Hello people, this is going to be a video on how to do the basics of Star Citizen. Let's suppose you bought yourself a ship package, you've signed up for the game, you've chosen your username, all the rest of that kind of stuff, and you're now ready to enter the game for the first time. You'll end up on this screen once you push the launch button, and you've got three options here. Arena Commander is essentially like fly around in your ship and destroy targets. It'll keep respawning over and over. It's not something that I recommend for new players. Star Marine is first-person combat, but it's not great first-person combat. You're going to have a lot more fun with something like Call of Duty if that's your jam. The main game itself that you probably bought the package for is the Persistent Universe, so you would select that. The next thing that it's going to ask you is to choose your primary residence. You'll have 4 different options. Those will be Area 18, Lorville, Orison, and New Babbage. I would recommend that you start at New Babbage. There's a few reasons for that that I'll get into as we go through this as we go through this video, and then we'll sort of talk about that. But just assume that New Babbage is a starting location that you want to start at to begin with, and we'll go with that. The next thing that you'll do after you've chosen your starting location is it'll kick you into this character customization screen. You'll start off by choosing your gender, male or female. Then you'll start off by cycling through what your presets are. You find one that you sort of maybe half-assed like, and then you choose the begin blending option. You'll then get a second head here. And this is a part that confuses a lot of people. It's like, why do I have 2 heads? This one is only for copying certain aspects onto the main character. Right now it defaults out to whole head. And this is your blend thing. So I can change the character to look more or less like the alternate head. Using that little slider here. You can do stuff like the eyes. Maybe you want to change just the eyes to make them look a little bit more like the alternate character. You decide, I'm going to go in, I like this guy's jaw, it looks kind of cool. I'll just select the jaw and I'll add a little bit more of that to my character. However, the character that you're playing with in the game is always going to be the one on the right-hand side. When you get into stuff like hair and eyes and things like that, you're changing the color through the actual just direct options. It's not the blending thing. So you can see that although this character has brown eyes, when I change it, it's only changing on the head on the right. Same thing with the hair. Your hair colors or hairstyles that you're choosing, or rather colors, are up at the top, and then your hairstyles are the ones on the side here. And you can re-edit the look of your character anytime you want. So if you make one that you're just in a rush to play the game, you think it looks kind of stupid, you can come back to it at any point from the start here. And then you can also just randomize any of the features on here. If you set the whole head, or the first head rather, there should be a randomized thing. Now I've already got my character set up. I don't really want to change the appearance of it, so I'm just going to cancel out on this. I'm going to leave this. You would normally choose accept though. And now you're ready to enter the universe for the first time. And this is disturbing. Alright, let's try setting it for a specific server. Normally you'd want to set to best. And it doesn't seem to want to load into the game. So rather than re-explaining all of that, I'm going to try rerunning it. Or relaunching it and see whether or not that fixes the issue. And this is my third time through making the video. It's glitched out. I got a really nice server the first time through, but unfortunately that did not last because I did a couple of other videos, and then I went back out to do this, and I've been getting bad servers. It's Saturday night when I'm filming this. That could be a busy playtime. That could have some effect on it. Or it could be that I'm going through stuff that I probably shouldn't be playing around with on the way into my game when I've already got an established character. And it's a pretty long load screen, so you definitely want to make sure you've installed the game to an SSD. That will help a lot more than trying to play it from a hard drive. Okay, so we've already gone through the selecting your location, doing your character. Now we're loading into the game. Alright, so once you're in a game, you wake up in a bed in the habitat. First thing you want to do is push the Y button to get out of bed. That works if you're in a spaceship seat or anything else. There's not really anything that you can do inside of this room. You can open up the bathroom door, you can slide out the toilet, you can turn off the light switch here, but other than that, there's not really anything to interact with. If you do want to interact with stuff, you push and hold the F button, and when it lights up, you can then click the left mouse button in order to interact with it. So that turns off the lights. Now to get out of here, we walk over to the door, push and hold F. You get the option to open it, click the left mouse button. We're now in the Aspire Grand Hotel. This is not an apartment that you own, so make sure you don't leave anything in there. This is simply a hotel room that you've rented for the night, and once you're out, you're out. There is no way to reopen that door from the outside. Make your way over to the elevators, push and hold the F button, click the left mouse, and it'll call the elevator to this floor. If you're new to the game, you'll probably spend some time gawking at the scenery, but we're going to try and cut out most of that middle stuff here. We select the lobby, push the F button to make it active, and then you can scroll up and down through that list with the mouse wheel. We're in the lobby of the hotel. We're going to make our way to the subway trams. And we just look for the stairs going down. That will lead us directly to the transit system. We're going to go to the spaceport. There's other options here, but you bought a spaceship in a space game. I'm sure you want to try out your spaceship. You get super lucky, you just make it in time for the tram. It'll take us outside. Once again, it's at night here, so that's going to make things a little bit difficult. There is no way to skip time, unfortunately. You get what you get, and when I spawned in, it happened to be at night on Microtech. I should also point out on the left side of the screen you have your global chat window. If you want to type a message to global, hit return, type in your message, and then hit return. And your message will show up right next to your name there. You can also push F12 to get rid of that, to hide it, in order to take some of the distraction away. but I would recommend getting some use out of it, because if you're a new player, that's an extremely handy way to ask for help on how to do stuff. Where to find a spaceport, things like that. Okay, we're at the spaceport. You can see there's signage here that says New Babbage International Interstellar Spaceport. Now we need to make our way to the surface, or to the main lobby of the spaceport. So there's not very many ways to go to get lost. Eventually you'll find yourself over by these elevators, and you call an elevator again. And when it arrives, there's only going to be two options. One is going to be the transit loop, and one is going to be the International Spaceport. NBIS. Sorry, Interstellar Spaceport. Got to remember we're playing a space game. Okay, so you make your way upstairs. There's not really much you can do here. All these elevators lead to the same place, which is back to the transit area. There's not too many ways to get lost in here. Just keep following the tunnels until you find yourself in a larger room. See, dead ends. Not really anybody to talk to. Ignore the signage. When you get to the top of the stairs, you can gawk out the window here at the city. And if you make your way over on the side here, you'll find the terminals where you can summon up your ship to fly. Walk up to any terminal.
Welcome to the ASOP Vehicle Retrieval System.
We're going to retrieve the Anvil Pisces.
Vehicle selected.
I've got a number of ships, but this is similar to what you might find in a starter package.
Has been delivered to the following location.
It's told me it's in Hangar 9. You can just use the S key to back away from any of the screens. Any of the elevators will take you there, so it doesn't matter which one you select. We're going down to Hangar 9. Whoops. I chose the terminal again. So you can use the mouse wheel, scroll down, find the hangar you're looking for. If you don't remember what it said on the screen, you'll notice that it'll show up in blue on the heads-up display. It'll tell you your ship, and it'll tell you what the hangar is and the distance from it. So that helps if you're kind of scatterbrained when you're at the terminal. This is a ship I summoned. Yours may look different depending on which starter package you bought. And of course you have to get in and fly it. Now you see this little sort of blue-green circle marker, not the one on the ground, but the one that's marked ramp access. Any ship will have that. Sometimes if you don't see that, you just walk up to the ramp, you push and hold the F button, and you see if the ramp itself lights up, in which case you would click the mouse button. But that tends to be only older ships. Most of the new ones have buttons that you push. So we open the ramp, we come inside, we close the door. This is the ship. It's completely powered off. There's a couple of seats, there's a little bit of cargo space, and then finally there's the all-important pilot seat. We want to sit in the pilot seat. Some ships, but not all, will have interactable buttons that you can look around with your mouse and you can find the power on button. Typically, I just use the R key. And I guess this is still powered on because the game crashed on me the last time that I tried to do this, so it's still active. Now we need to contact the spaceport. You can just push the F11 key to shortcut you directly to the comm menu. Select the Friends tab, select the spaceport. You'll get a window come up here that says you're hailing them. And then when he says clear to launch, you can then push F11 again to close this window. On the left side of the HUD, you've got this speed thing, and your mouse pointer, or your mouse wheel rather, will change your speed limiter. If we look up, we can see that the hangar is open above us. We're going to use a space bar to strafe up from the pad until we get outside of the hangar. Now, I thought that I'd reset my controls to default, which is mouse controls, but I suppose I haven't. Now, you can also use the F4 to go to your external view. You can look around with that. The hangar's closing. I've got a little bit of altitude. Now, I'm going to have to go to my controls, and I'm going to have to make sure that I've got those set to what you would normally be using. So that's keybind, keyboard and mouse, advanced controls, flight movement. Whoops, that is not what I wanted it to be. Okay, so Y-axis on the mouse, and for some reason it thinks I want to use the alternate key. Okay, so this should be back to exactly what you're used to flying with default. Why is it not? Still wants to use the alt for some reason. So by default, you've got this. I've got to figure out what's up with that before I can continue with this tutorial. Okay. Now it's not the alt modifier. Okay, so when you move the mouse pointer around, you have to be careful about this because it'll drag the ship around. This is essentially a virtual joystick. At this point, you can use WASD, strafe to the side, strafe to the side, forward, backward. And there's also the up and down, which is spacebar and control. You can see my altitude is dropping on the right hand side. I've got the altitude tape, or I've got up. And when you stop moving your controls, the ship will stop where you're at. The other thing that's important is you have the C key, which is your cruise control. Now, if you look on the speed indicator, you can see how it's limited by that little box on the left side of this, the right side of the speed indicator, and I can turn that up using the mouse wheel. But as soon as I let go of the W key, we slow back down to 0. If I push and hold C, or tap C rather, tapping C turns on cruise control. And we're now flying around, and I can fly the ship. The N key will put up the landing gear. And if we go to the external view, you can see that it's folded my wings out. I'm now flying. Side to side on the mouse will give me yaw axis. Forward and back on the mouse makes me climb or dive. Rolling the mouse wheel forward increases the speed limiter. Rolling the mouse wheel backward decreases the speed limiter. And the lower the setting of your speed limiter, the lower the speed of your strafing and your, like if you strafe side to side. There's also Q and E to roll the ship. So this is pushing and holding E, push and hold Q. Now, just so we can see what we're doing a little bit better, I'm going to try to take us up to space. So first we find space. Then we increase the speed limiter. And when you take that higher to maximum, your steering becomes less responsive. It becomes a little bit less responsive to steer. I'm going to go over to the other side of the planet and I'm going to land, and then I may end up coming back and landing in the hangars here. Now you might notice that I seem to be looking around a lot. I've got head tracking. The game is set up so that if you have a web camera, you can actually have it look at your face and move the camera around as you move your head around. I use a device called TrackIR, which is a little bit more accurate, but it's a very good upgrade to have because it allows you to look around and still have full control over your ship while you're looking around, as opposed to you have to hold down the Z key and stop using the pitch axis to control yourself. Now, if we tap the B button on the keyboard, that will activate the quantum drive, and I'm going to look for a spot that I can head to on the other side of the planet. This is 1,200 kilometers away, so I know that'll be on the other side of the planet. And then once it's fully spooled and fully calibrated, you push and hold the B. And it goes into quantum travel. And this brings us around to the light side of the planet. And when you quantum to something on the ground, it will typically take you to about 20 to 30 kilometers away from it. I don't want to travel to that, so I'll turn off the quantum drive. I'll roll the ship so that I'm not inverted. And I'll get a little bit closer to the ground. Now I'm flying at my maximum speed here, so this is something you want to be a little bit careful with. If you run into the ground, you will die. And in fact, I do actually intend to die in this episode just to show you what happens. But it's not time for that yet. And you see you get a little bit of rain on your windshield. Now you see that little X indicator that's just below the center of the screen, or rather just below my gun marker? That's what's called your vector indicator. That tells you where your ship is going to be. And if that is in the side of a mountain or a building or something like that, that means you're going to fly into it. If it's above a mountaintop, that means you're going to miss it. So I'm not going to hit this mountain now. If I strafe down a little bit, then I would. If I strafe up a little bit, then I can miss it. So that essentially is a predictor of where your ship is going to go. And depending on what your frame rate's like, you might have some fun flying around low to the ground, enjoying the scenery. And if you say to yourself, well, this looks pretty cool, but I want to jump out and I want to look at it on foot, what you do for that is you slow down your speed limiter. Make sure your wings are relatively level. N to lower the landing gear.
Landing gear deployed.
We'll drop our altitude a little bit more. And at this point I can push C and it will turn off the speed limitator, the cruise control rather, and I'll come to a hover in this spot. And if I go to the outside view, I'd have to push and hold the Z now to look around with the camera because I've got my my mouse activating that. If I'm in the outside view, I can then strafe down until I get to the ground. And the lower that I roll the speed limiter, the slower that I'll strafe. For instance, that's right down at the bottom. That's strafing up with it right down at the bottom. That's if I roll it up so that it's up a little bit higher. So that gives you pretty good control over your ship just by taking a speed limiter down and you decide, I don't want to land on these rocks, that would make me look like an idiot. So you'll strafe to the side a little bit, and then maybe strafe forward a little bit using the W key. And then you go, okay, this looks nice and clear. I'm going to land at this location. And you just come in nice and gently, and you're down. Then you can go back to the internal view. You can push and hold the Y button. That's the same one as you used to get out of bed initially. And your ship is still fully powered on. It's ready to fly. The engines are running. The shields are up. You're ready for action. And you can then choose to go outside of the ship. Now, if you're someplace like a moon or something like that, it might not have an atmosphere. So you might want to just look in your inventory and make sure you're wearing your helmet. Okay, that's taken a little while to open, but I can go to the external view and I can check it like that. Typically, a slow inventory is a sign that the server might be getting unstable. And I'm outside the ship here. It shows my temperature in the bottom right corner of the bottom left corner of the screen rather. It's minus 20 degrees Celsius, so it's not particularly toasty, but with the suit I'm wearing, it's not too cold. Some planets are much hotter or much colder, and just above that little health indicator, you'll find a survival time. So, for instance, you see how it's divided into blue and then white and then red. If it's in the red, it means it's too hot for your current suit. If it's in the blue, it means it's too cold for your current suit, and there will be a survival countdown. It could be an hour, it could be 15 minutes, it could be 5 minutes, depending on what you're wearing. If I was to take off my flight suit, it would be too cold and I would get a survival warning. I'm not going to bother to do that because this is not a good place to die. So we've landed out in the middle of nowhere. There's not really much to see. But that explains how to land in a location. Now, I'm going to jump back into the ship. And I'm going to show you how to use the map to set locations. That's the F2 key. And in order to set a location on a planet, you want to double-click on the planet, and it'll zoom in a little bit closer. If you don't do that, if you just zoom into the planet, you use the right mouse button to drag, use the left mouse button to orbit. But if you don't double-click on it, you won't see the actual surface locations, and you won't be able to select them. So we're going to go to New Babbage. We're going to set a route. Why will it not let me set a route? Possibly because I'm not actually sitting at the controls of the ship. So, to do that, we sit down at the controls. And we try that again. Double click on Microtech, zoom in, select New Babbage. Now we can set the route, and you can see that I have one waypoint and it's at New Babbage. So now we can close this, and even though there's a bunch of different places that will show up on your QT drive, the reason that you want to set a destination is because then when you turn on your quantum travel, the drive for it, that will be the only icon that actually lights up. So now what we want to do is make sure we got the mouse pointer centered, so we're not going to start spinning like crazy as we lift off. We push the space bar to lift off the surface. Maybe roll the mouse pointer up a little bit to increase our climb rate. Push the C to engage the cruise control. We'll start moving forward. Push the N to raise the landing gear again. And on this ship, that also unfolds the wings. Then we can point our nose to the sky and we can start climbing up for space again. Now, the red and the green sections on the speed indicator are what they consider standard combat maneuvering, which is where you get good handling, and then you can also go up into the red zone, which is it starts to get to bad handling. Your ship won't swing around as fast. You can see that even though I'm swinging it, that vector indicator is not coming around to line up with the craft particularly quickly. And those of you that have played flight simulators might recognize the pitch ladder just to the sides of the mouse pointer, and up at the top you have the compass. There's also up at the very top there, it's your infrared signature, which is the one on the left, and your electromagnetic signature, which is the one on the right. I believe the center one might be visual, but honestly I'm not positive enough that I'm really even comfortable saying that. Now we're up at 12 kilometers, 12,000 meters, so we should be close enough for a quantum jump. So what we'll do is we'll tap the B button, and we can see this little blue arrow that points towards our destination. We highlight that over New Babbage. We wait for it to spool up. And then once the spooling and the calibration are complete, we push and hold B. And even though you would think it wants to fly through the planet, it's smart enough to actually fly around the planet. Way back in the old days, it used to fly through the planet. And we're back to the dark side of the planet. We're coming in towards New Babbage. I know from being here in the past that that's the spaceport right there. So we're going to scroll this wheel way down. We're going to roll ourselves so we're not inverted anymore. We're going to turn off the quantum drive, which is tap the B again, to get some of the clutter out of our HUD. Now, New Babbage, even if you're in the dark, the spaceport, I'll turn off the cruise control, is the cluster of lights that are off by themselves. The other thing that you can do when you go to an unfamiliar location and you don't know where the spaceport is you look for these little inverted V symbols. Those are markers of another character's ship, and they're typically around the spaceport. So we have the spaceport here. We're going to use W to strafe forward and get a little bit closer to it. I don't really want to use cruise control because I'm not all that smooth using mouse flying anymore. I'm used to flying with a joystick, throttle, and rudder pedals. And you can also, when you're on the dark side of a planet, push the tab key and it'll send out a ping with your radar. And that essentially gives you a look at what's in the ground, or on the ground. Okay, so cruise control's not on. I let go of the W. I've come to a hover even though I'm pointing my nose straight down. And then I go into F11 and I try to ask for landing permission. Go to Friends, the spaceport.
Please proceed to assigned landing bay.
And then we have to get a little bit closer, I guess, before it's going to show us this landing bay. Okay, now you see the V symbol with the circle around it. It was just like the symbol you saw inside of the hangar when you first took off. That's our assigned landing bay. Sometimes it'll be a hangar that's open from the top. Sometimes it will be a hangar that you fly in from the side. We'll just do another ping. Now that one is one that you fly in through the side. So I'm just going to overshoot it a little bit. And then I'm going to turn the ship around. And I'm going to line up on it. Q and E to roll the craft, to line yourself up with it. Roll the speed limiter with the scroll wheel down to something fairly low. And then we'll just slowly move forwards. Now, you also want to make sure you put your landing gear down. That's the N.
Landing gear deployed.
And sometimes it doesn't dry in the hangar until you start to get a little bit closer to it. I'm a little below it here. That's why it looks weird from the perspective. So that little check mark is exactly where I want to be landed. So I'll strafe forward, nice and gentle. Don't get too carried away with the speed. Make sure our wings are level. Speed limiter at minimum. And then we scroll down. Make sure you're in far enough that you're not going to get clipped by the door either. So usually I try to pull forward to about here. And then we strafe down.
Landing complete.
And you'll get a message like that, landing complete. Now, it's a good habit to get into to push the F1 to bring up your mobiGlas and to go to the little wrench icon here and to refill your ship. This is where you would buy your quantum fuel, your hydrogen fuel, which is what you normally use for flying around in atmosphere. And you just click on whatever you need. Restock is if you've used up some missiles or something like that. That will buy you more missiles. And once these things are all no service required,
Quantum fuel is at 100%.
then you know your ship is fully fueled up and you're done. And you can then push F1 again to get the mobiGlas closed. At this point, you will shut off your ship completely. If you just want to shut off your engines because you're stopping to pick up a package, that's the I key. But a full shutdown is U. That shuts off your engines, your shields, internal power, all the rest of that stuff. And then Y to get out of your pilot seat. Back out here, we open the door. Close the ship back up. And that's it. That's your first flight. You're pretty much a spaceman now. The one final step that you should probably get into the habit of doing is to go back to the terminal and to store your ship. It's not necessary. Eventually it'll time out and the spaceport will automatically store it, but it's a good habit to get into, particularly if you have stuff in there like, let's say you threw a spacesuit into your ship, or you threw a couple of bottles of water, or something along those lines, and you want to make sure that it gets saved with that stuff in it. So you just make your way back to the terminal, select hold the F button, left click, and then you find your ship and you click store.
Please visit us again. Goodbye.
Hey buddy, how's your night going? Alright, moving right along. Okay, now I did promise you I'd die for this episode, and you can actually commit suicide, so I'm going to show you what happens if you die. It's kind of the same effect if you slam into the ground with your ship. There's one minor difference, and that's that if you do that, when you come back to the ship terminal, you would have to do an insurance claim.
To the ASOP.
And the way you do that is you find a ship that's not actually here, and you would click on claim, C8R, and you file a claim. It'll tell you how long it's going to take before your ship is actually available to use. You can pay the expedited fee, which is shown here, and that will give it to you instantly, or sometimes it just quickens up the claim time. Usually I don't do that because the starter ships in particular, it's a pretty low claim time. So I don't think that I'd bother with that. And once the timer runs out, you can then claim your ship again. However, that won't have anything in the inventory that you might have left there. So if you put some water bottles or guns or a spacesuit was in your personal inventory on the ship, then you'll lose that. So if you don't have to, don't claim it. But if you do have to, it's an easy enough process. And now when I go back to the previous menu, the rescue version of the Pisces is available to retrieve. Now, let's say that you're out doing something crazy and dangerous and you decide that you're going to take a risk and it doesn't pay off for you, you get killed. I'm just going to backspace, and I died. Oh no. What that'll do is it will take you back to your spawn location, which is where you would have set initially as your home base. In this case, it's New Babbage, so it's going to put me at the hospital here. There will be a bit of a timeout. When you get killed out in the field, it'll say you're incapacitated, and you can then choose to respawn, or you can choose to wait for somebody else to get you back on your feet. If you are with some friends and they have a med pen or a med gun, they can then respawn you, or if you want to spend 15,000 credits, you can put out a contract for some random person to come and do it. If you don't do that and you choose to die, you end up here in the hospital. You get a courtesy flight suit and a helmet, and you wake up in a bed with nothing on but a hospital gown. You're essentially a clone of who you used to be. Once again, Y will get you out of the bed. And now your local inventory is nothing. So whatever you might have had in your spacesuit, you don't have in your spacesuit anymore. You're just wearing this idiotic hospital gown. And they tell you that they give you a complimentary flight suit and helmet. So if you go into your inventory, you should be able to find it in there. And it's this one here and the matching helmet. Now, I'm not going to put those on right away because there's a particular bug that comes with the hospitals in New Babbage in particular. I don't know if the other ones do that. There's a good chance I'm going to die just leaving the hospital. So you find your way out to the main hangars. Yeah, this guy knows how it works. Find the elevator. Summon the elevator. Back up from the elevator, and if it shows up, you're in luck. Otherwise, it might spit you outside of the building, and you'll fall to your death, and you'll die again. So I don't recommend...
That just happened to me.
That's why I don't put my flight suit on until I get to the ground floor. And I'm actually making a YouTube video for beginners. That's a great example, is that there's a proximity chat in this where you can talk to people that are close to you. It's a really handy way to get around if you're new to the game, and most of the people are pretty helpful. At this point, all you have to do is make your way to the tram station and find your way back to the spaceport. You're ready for more fun, and once you're in the lobby, you're pretty safe in getting dressed. So you get rid of the hospital gown, find your flight suit, which is much easier to do for a new player because you don't have so much stuff cluttering up your menus or your inventory. And that's it. You're ready for the universe once again. Alright, that's the basics on how to do your first little bit in Star Citizen. I'm going to leave the video at that and possibly come back with a little bit more advanced one for the next one. Thanks for watching. Join me for the next one.